Thank you, Assistant Speaker. And as the member for Croydon indicated, we are supportive of this bill and actually in support of renewables, a transition to renewables more broadly in a practical and common sense way, so we can not only keep the lights on and cook a good stir-fry, but so our farms and factories can keep doing what they do best, and that is manufacturing and producing food for not only the rest of the state and the rest of the country, but indeed the rest of the world. And I assure you that currently, at the moment, sun and wind just doesn't do that. Energy systems obviously need to be safe, they need to be sustainable, but they also need to be reliable, and we need to remember that. I do thank the member for Croydon for a very comprehensive bill briefing and summary on the changes that we are debating in this place today. And of course, this bill seeks to amend the energy safety compliance framework for a rapidly changing landscape, and it is evolving very quickly, so this bill will modernise that for that very quickly evolving space. This bill seeks to ensure that renewable energy companies are meeting the same compliance requirements as traditional electricity operators and companies. And this topic is vitally important to the entire electorate of Mildura. With the explosion of renewable energy investment right across the region, companies have recognised and they've taken advantage of the abundant sunlight that we have in our region and the incredible amount of wind, particularly through the spring and summer months. And they are really harnessing that, taking advantage of it with solar farms on massive scales being developed. And that also has an enormous impact on local economies, not only with the creation of jobs while those farms are being constructed, but also with the financial injection into small towns such as Weeman, such as Robinvale, Bannerton, those small communities where these solar farms have been constructed, has huge economic value as well as obviously the benefit for renewable energy while they are in those locations building those farms. Let's hope, though, that this also means that companies rolling out the projects with regards to renewable transmission lines, because once we have those farms constructed in the regions, we've got to be able to get that power everywhere else. We need to be able to transmit all of that power that's generated through these farms and through the solar and wind farms. So let's talk about the infrastructure to do that, like the VNI West project. People, in particularly the south of my electorate, are very concerned with the VNI West project after having what they thought was the preferred option for the new 500 kV transmission lines changed without consultation. Imagine how confused they were to learn that all of a sudden there was a new option, option 5, and being told that that was now the preferred option. There was a few community meetings, they were held but poorly advertised, and we have worked with the market operator around that. Submissions were called for as well, and submissions were received. One very interesting one was from Professor Bruce Mountain and Simon Bartlett AM, submitted a very detailed document outlining a few important points. With that submission, and the report says, if developed, VNI will be the biggest single expense in Victorian transmission system for more than 50 years and the biggest mistake in transmission planning in living memory. The Victorian government has used its legislative powers to make the consultation report the last step in the regulatory approval process and the last step in the regulatory approval process. Simon Bartlett, he's not just a guy that's decided to write a submission. He is previously a member of the National Electricity Markets Reliability Panel, a Professor of Electrical Engineering and Chief Operating Officer of Powerlink. And Professor Mountain was the director of, or is the director of, Victorian Energy Policy Centre at Victoria University. And they did submit this very detailed critique of the consultation, AEMO's consultation report. And they've been working very closely with the community from Charlton, Donald, Sanarned, up through Kerrang, Horsham, right through the region, and have attended many meetings, spoken with the community at length. And they did conclude that the development would be, as they state, a monumental mistake. They say, and there are 5 key points, that it would drastically increase Victoria's susceptibility to statewide blackouts through the exposure to natural disasters and bushfire risks, and I'm paraphrasing here just to save time. The double transmission charges in Victoria and lay the foundation for further transmission developments that together will triple transmission charges in Victoria. It would also force new renewable generation along the VNI route, where they predict that congestion will mean up to 50% of renewable generation built along that corridor could be wasted through spills as a result of transmission congestion. And it all gets very, very technical. But in the end, it was reported by not only Mr Bartlett and Professor Mountain that there could be far more elegant solutions to being able to transmit all of the renewable energy from the region's solar farms and wind farms in a much more cost-effective way and a much more energy-efficient way than the new proposed 500 kV lines that are sought through VNI West. The community are still fighting for consultation. They are in constant contact with all of their local members, myself included, our federal member, and working for the detail that they need, because we all know that the devil is usually in the detail when it comes to these matters. I've stood with these communities, like I said. I've held informal meetings, and although everyone agrees that a shift to renewables is needed, at what expense is that needed? So we also need to remember that compliance with safety should also mean compliance, and new infrastructure builds, community consultation should also be a part of that. Like I said, I've stood with these communities, I've talked to them at length, I text them often, and these are communities not just in my electorate but also neighbouring electorate. The young farmers in Sanarned have been very vocal about this. The VFF branch in Charlton and Canoa Bridge have been very vocal about it as well, and they have a wind farm there as well. We obviously know that the transmission lines are needed to get all of that energy into the grid, but at what cost? So when we talk about electricity safety and the communities that electricity will be generated in as we transition to renewables, we need to remember them and not disregard those communities who, I'll remind, and I bang on about this all the time, but I'll remind everyone once again, they are producing our food and fibre, your food and fibre. They should be shown the same, if not more respect than the communities we're producing it for, because without them, of course, we don't eat and we are not clothed. So we are broadly in support of this bill, but that the compliance element also needs to extend to those companies to make sure that they are consulting with communities in the proper way.